Hey guys, welcome back to another A Girl Gone London video. This one is a little bit unscripted, so we'll see where we go with this. It's not unscripted. I have an outline of exactly what I'm going to talk about, but I haven't exactly determined what I'm going to talk about with each individual thing. So anyway, let's get started. We're talking about 11 household British items or British words that Americans wouldn't understand because we call them something different. By the way, welcome to my setup today, which is my couch. And like, why do I need like 42 blankets? Someone explain. There's definitely not even this many people that live in my house is the number of blankets I somehow think I need. And I always use the same one. So why do I have the others? Right, as I said, unscripted. Okay, here we go. Number 1, British words Americans don't understand. The first thing on my list was Cellotape. So Cellotape is a brand name. And Cellotape is this kind of tape. You use it to like wrap a gift. That's what you use Cellotape for. Maybe like tape a children's like piece of artwork to the fridge or something. That kind of tape. It's not duct tape. It's not masking tape. It's not packing tape. It's Cellotape in the UK. If you asked an American for Cellotape, no idea. We would know that you were asking for tape because we understand the word tape, but we don't call it Cellotape. We have another brand name that we use for it, which is Scotch tape. So in America, we would say, pass me the Scotch tape to wrap this gift, not the Cellotape. Next on my list in the UK, you might say biro. You might say it. I've never said it. And I definitely feel like it's falling out of fashion because I feel like young people don't say it as much, but a lot of people do say biro, and that means ballpoint pen. So we would have no idea what a biro is. We would say pen, ballpoint pen, or we have Bic as our major brand name for pens. We wouldn't say like pass me the Bic though. We would just call it a pen, and British people do say pen as well. For Americans watching, don't get the impression that everyone calls it a biro, and a biro is a particular type of pen. But if you said biro in America, it would go right over our heads. Without context clues, we'd have no idea what you're talking about. The next thing on my list is Prit stick. Prit stick, very common in the UK. Children use it at school to do arts and crafts projects. You'll know exactly what I'm talking about if you're a British person, a British viewer. My American viewers probably are getting some context clue idea of what it means, but we wouldn't call it a Prit stick. We would not have that could be multiple different things. We would just simply call it a glue stick. Next on my list, moving swiftly along, is typically in the UK, you would call it a Stanley knife, or even sometimes you could go not brand name and you could say like utility knife, Stanley knife. In the US, it's more common to call this a box cutter. So again, we could probably figure it out in America, especially if you said like utility knife. It's not entirely different, but we would really just kind of first say box cutter. And in the UK, I notice people definitely say Stanley knife or some sort of like utility knife. I don't hear the phrase box cutter in the UK that much. The next one on my list is the British use of tipex. Tipex is a brand for correction fluid. However, in America, we would not say correction fluid. We would also not say tipex. We call it whiteout. So if you ask for tipex, that's one of those ones that, again, you need a lot of context clues to figure out what that means. Simply by the word alone, an American couldn't figure that out because tipex is a brand. It doesn't actually really describe what is happening with the usage of that item. So yes, in the US, tipex would go right over our heads as well, and you would have to ask for whiteout. The next thing on my list of kind of like household items that we wouldn't understand is plaster versus BandAid. And this is an important one because America does have a specific thought that comes to our head when you ask for plaster, and it is definitely not what British people think of as a plaster. Okay, so in the UK, this thing is a plaster. So great, you can also plaster the walls, but if you're asking somebody for a plaster, this is what they're gonna mean. In the US, we use the brand name BandAid. So again, we would say BandAid for, even if it's not a BandAid brand item, we would still call it a Band-Aid. If you ask for plaster in the US, we're going to think you mean kind of like a children's craft version of plaster. So we would think that you would want to do crafts. Maybe you want to like make an outline of your hand, maybe you want to sculpt something, but we would definitely be thinking arts and crafts rather than you have like a medical need. Next on my list is the word faucet in America, which is typically tap in the UK. So we would talk about mixer taps in the UK, which we talk about a lot on this channel, but in the US we call them faucets. So the sink faucet or mixer faucets, or now I'm gonna say faucets so many times it's not even gonna be a word, but suffice it to say, to tap in the US is going to be like to tap something like this, to tap your card onto a machine. We don't call these things taps, we call them faucets. And another one on my list, which also has to do with brand names, is this stuff is called, you can call it a couple different things. You could call it washing up liquid. That's the non-branded term in the UK. Or you could call it fairy liquid, because fairy liquid is the brand, but I feel like it also can be used kind of generically as well. And so if you said washing up liquid in America, the first place that we'd be confused is we don't call it washing up, we call it doing the dishes. So we could probably get what you meant, but maybe not entirely there. If you said fairy liquid, we'd have no idea. That is not a brand we're familiar with in the US, and we call it dish soap. And on the same topic of washing up or doing the dishes, there's another one, which is marigolds in the UK. Everybody knows what they are. They say get a pair of marigolds. There's a number of different, I mean, you know, you can use it in a number of different phrases having to do with cleaning something, I guess, but you would just call it marigolds. And you know that you're talking about these yellow rubber gloves. We do not say marigolds in the US because that is not a brand we're familiar with. Again, we would just say rubber gloves. Another one which is related to items you might find in the kitchen is that in the UK, they say cling film, and in the US, we say saran wrap. So I think cling film is the one that makes the most sense here, because saran wrap doesn't entirely tell you what is happening like cling film does. It's kind of like a film that clings to your food to save it. But in America, we don't say cling film, we say saran wrap. Next up, also in the kitchen, is that this thing is called a tea towel in the UK. It is not called a tea towel in the US. It is called a dish towel. And last on my list is probably something around the house that you'd find in a child's room, and that is a teddy. So, Americans do understand the word teddy, especially if you say teddy bear. Everyone knows what a teddy bear is, obviously. But in the UK, people tend to say teddies relating to all different types of like soft toys. So I'm kind of revealing what Americans would call them. So in America, we would call them like a plushie or soft toys or something like that. We wouldn't refer to a child's collection of various stuffed animals. We'd also say stuffed animal. We wouldn't refer to this as their teddies. We would only specifically say that if they had like a teddy bear, and we would probably say the full thing of their teddy bear. Now, did you need to know any of this to function in your life today? Probably not, but I hope you did learn at least one new thing. Thanks very much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.